Okay, so let's talk about making graphs because it seemed like graph making last time was a little bit difficult. So starting off here, you want to kind of port in some data. Um, you may not have, I don't have data right on hand, so we'll make it up here, but um, let's just see what data table looks like this. We have a mass of cart, and we have 0.591. Okay, we collect some velocities. I'm not going to fill these out per se. Okay, so first off, you kind of want to figure out which one is your independent variable and which one's your dependent variable. That didn't go so well. Okay, there we go. So in this case here, it looks as if this data table is about the mass of the cart, which we're increasing by 100 grams, and the average velocity. So I don't need these trials in here. In fact, they're going to kind of just get in the way. So if you do wind up porting your data table directly into Google Sheets, I'd recommend just deleting the areas of the graph that you, well, the chart that you don't need. So if I hit delete columns B and D, what it'll do is it'll actually move these things together. And I also want to point something out here as well. If you notice here, my velocities, I do not have the units on them. They wind up in the right-hand side. That indicates to me that they are being read as numbers. Meanwhile, because I have the kilograms on these ones, they are being confused by the program, and it is thinking that they are essentially words instead of numbers. So I'm going to let this error go for now just to kind of show what happens. But let's try and make a graph. So if I highlight my data like this, and I go to Insert, I'm going to go to Chart, and it's going to try to make a chart for me. And this is good. Now, one thing I'm noticing over here, I've seen this happen a couple times. For some reason, it doesn't. Google Sheets is having an issue with not making the x-axis and the series things work right. I've been seeing a lot of people's graphs that wind up looking like this, essentially. And if you see that these are in here, it just isn't right. And that's kind of an issue. So you want to make sure that your data for your x-axis, your independent variable, does wind up being in the x-axis section over here. So to do that, just click on this, click in here, highlight the data you want to be on your x-axis, and then hit OK. Well, hit Enter first, I think, and then it'll pop in there. Now, if you notice here, it automatically gave us a bar chart or bar graph. And that is once again because I have these kilograms over here. And it's thinking this is changing by type. So just to remind you, you want to make sure that the kilograms and your units are off of this, because it does confuse what they are. So you've noticed here, as soon as I remove the unit, the number does go back over to the right-hand side where the program is once again treating it like a number. And now, if we go in here, edit chart again, and we change this to a scatter plot, this will actually look like it's supposed to. and it kind of plays a bit better. Even so, right now, I'm still not super happy with these axes, because these axes are kind of a little funky. I don't know why we're starting at 0.591. That's a little strange, but we'll fix that. So our first order of business here will be to look at the title. The title looks to be pretty good, and in all honesty, the way we had this thing set up here, it put the axes in very nicely. But just in case you do need to change those things, if you come into the customize options over here, if you click on the chart axis titles, you can come in here and change stuff. So let's suppose I want to just remove the average and the units here. I can just retype this, and there's that. If you need to change the X or Y axis, you can just change this little drop down tab to whatever you want to work on, and you can add more stuff there, and it pops up over there. So that's how you kind of work those things. So let's actually take a look at this x-axis, because this x-axis, it's just kind of a little bit funky looking. I don't like how it has this labeled, because it's just a little strange going up in these increments. It's not great. So let me see if I can find the x-axis stuff. Alright, so to take off these weird things where they're going up by the exact data points that we have over here, what you want to do is go into the horizontal axis and click on the uncheck the treat labels as text. That'll kind of space these things out a bit better, and then we can actually mess with the minimum and maximum values. So let's say I want to go from 0.5 to let's just say 1.5. And that looks a little bit funky. Let's actually change that to like 1.25. Let's just make it 1. And that kind of makes the graph look a little bit better spaced out, and it doesn't look like we just set the axes up just to be a little strange. It's just a personal preference. I don't like that, the way that looked. The vertical axis, we can do the same thing here, where we can set the y-axis to start at 0, and that kind of makes our graph zoom out a little bit and gives us a bit better context as well. If you want to come down here to grid lines, we can mess with those a little bit, but I believe you can also put in a trend line as well. So in this case, just clicking that puts the trend line in there, and we can also change this so it puts the equation there for us as well for the trend line, which might actually be helpful because it gives you the slope, and it might be useful to kind of use that slope in your actual lab as well. As it stands now, this graph is pretty good, so we would just have to come here and hit copy chart, and then if you go over to your CLA, you should be able to paste it right in. So if you have any additional questions about graphing, please ask me. I want to make sure your graphs look pretty good for this CLA, so feel free to come find me. So best of luck with the rest of the CLA. If you have any other questions in the video, any other sections, check out some of the other videos here, and they should be able to help you out.